Shabbat Shalom. Let's see how well you were paying attention last week. We talked about a mighty man, a mighty hunter, the man of Nimrod. Thank you. We didn't arrange this in advance. Nimrod, the mighty hunter. And we talked about how he was perhaps mighty for being good at stabbing things, and then his ability to stab animals turned into his ability to stab people, and thus he became the founder of a first kingdom, which was built on stabbing. But that is not the only place Nimrod appears in Jewish tradition. True, his time on the Torah stage is very short, but in Midrash, well, you can't pass up a mighty man. You have to make sure that he has more screen time. He's just too good of a character to let drift into the background. And he figures mightily in the story of Avram. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the classic midrashic tale of Avram as the son of Terach, the idol maker. Right? We all know that story. I think it's pretty well known. The very short synopsis. Terach, Avram's father, was an idol maker. One day he left little Avram in charge of the store, and while Avram was there, he smashed all the idols and put the stick in the hand of the biggest idol. And when his father came home and he said, "Who smashed all the idols?" Little Abraham, or Avram at the time, said, "Well, you know, someone wanted to make a sacrifice, and the idols all got into an argument about who should get it, and that big one smashed all the small ones." His father says, "What, do I look like I'm stupid? Idols can't do that." To which Avram says, "And yet you worship them. The idols can't even take care of themselves. Why are you worshiping them?" Well, that's not the only part of his smart mouth behavior in the days of his father's idol shop, but it is at that point that the scene usually fades, and yet it is at that point that Nimrod comes back in. This is the part we don't always tell in religious school. Nimrod comes back in because what does his father do with this smart aleck boy? He drags him in front of the king. Because that's what every parent does when their kid gets a little uppity. Take them to the authorities. He takes Avram to the king, who is Nimrod at the time. We never hear when Nimrod dies. We know that they are living in the area where Nimrod would have been ruling, so it is very easy for the Midrashic authors to say Nimrod was still the king at the time. And he turns to young Avram. We always portray it as though he were a child, but he was probably a young adult. And he says, "Avram, I'm sure that you didn't mean any offense by smashing all the idols, but we need to take care of this problem." To which Avram says, "No, it's because I worship one God." And he says, "Okay, which God?" And he's like, No. I worship the one God. "Can you show me this God?" "Nope. No body, no form, no shape." "You mean there's no idol of this God?" "Nope." "You mean it's not one of the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the rivers, the trees?" "Nope." Blasphemy. He is charged with blasphemy because he doesn't worship something. Indeed, there's a whole court trial that goes for Avram before Nimrod, where Nimrod tries to patiently coax him. He says, "How can you not worship the earth, the very earth that gives us life?" To which Avram replies, "But the water can flood the earth." "Aha," says Nimrod, "then worship the water, the rivers, the rains, worship them." He says, "But the sun will dry up all of the rivers and rains." "Fine," says Nimrod, "then worship the sun." He says, "But the sun sets. Who made the sunrise? Who made the sunset? Who made the rains fall? Who made the earth that we stand upon?" Nimrod wasn't very happy with this, and so he threw him into a fiery furnace. This is one of the first miracles that happens on behalf of Abraham, according to the Midrash, because he is there in Ur Kasdim, he is there in Ur of the furnace, and this is where Avram is truly tested for the first time. But I want to back up a little bit, because it's easy to talk about the greatness of Avram. He is truly a seminal figure in all of human history, of making this change to a monotheistic faith without idolic representation. You'll notice that everywhere he goes, he may build altars, but he builds no idols. But I want to turn back and focus on Nimrod again, because after all, he is a mighty man. He deserves a little more discussion. Why was Nimrod upset that this young little bucher would not worship something? Why go through the rigmarole of a public trial, of trying to convince him to worship an idol, the earth, the sun, something? Why throw him into a furnace for failing to do so? Easy answer, he's a religious reactionary, right? No problem. We unfortunately live in a time where the world is rife with religious reactionaries, with Iranians who are willing to murder women who refuse to cover their hair, with people here trying to force Christianity into our own public sphere and personal lives, with people around the world engaging in violence, whether it be Buddhists in Myanmar, Hindus in India or other places, as religious reactionaries. We're familiar with it. Nimrod was probably just a religious reactionary. But hold on. He proposed that Avram worship different things. If you don't like the river, worship the rain. If you don't like the mountains, worship the sun. If you don't like this idol, worship that idol. That doesn't seem like a fundamentalist. That doesn't seem reactionary. In fact, in the ancient world, polytheists were known for being what would pass for tolerant in the modern world. They had literal pantheons of different gods. And when someone moved from one country to another country, they'd worship the new gods they found in the new country. They would all be perfectly happy if one person preferred Zeus and another person preferred Thor. No problem. They understood that. And when you came into contact with a different god, the question would not be, is my God better than your God? The question would be, oh, can I make an offering too? Where can I buy one of those tchotchke idols so I can add it to my collection? Religious reactionaryism? Being a religious reactionary was not normal in the ancient world. And I don't think that we can excuse Nimrod's totalitarian behavior as just being that of an angry fundamentalist. There is a deeper issue that Nimrod is facing, a deeper fear that Nimrod is facing, and a deeper crisis that he is trying to put down. Suggestions?
Yes. He's the mighty man. He's the king. If you question a universal, if you question idols, then you question the authority of a single mighty individual running your life.
Nimrod is the mighty king, you say. And as such, you have to accept his authority. But his authority seemed to be quite diffuse when it came to religion. He was happy for you to worship anything you chose. So how would refusing to worship a thing be any different than refusing to worship the sun but choosing to worship the mountain? Because that's the option that Nimrod is giving. He's not saying you have to worship like me exactly. That was the words of modern religious reactionaries. He is saying you have to worship something and not this one God that is different than all of the other idols that we are talking about. And it is, precisely as you hinted, because of his position as the leader, as the ruler, as the dictator, as being the mighty man. You see, idolatry is built not to service the spiritual needs of people. It is built to serve the material needs of the state. Idolatry was born out of the totalitarian states that were first created throughout the Fertile Crescent and other parts of the world, precisely because they were material. They were made of things. And those things were thus subject to the control of the mighty. If I am the emperor, or king, or sovereign, or whatever title you want to have, and I am in control of the physical worship of these things, that puts me in control of you and your religious life, and possibly even your life after this world. That is a very powerful lever to control. It is one that has been used in countries even since, even among those religions that try to claim they are not idolatrous. As soon as you have an instrument of undemocratic authority telling you that your life in this world and your life in the next world is subject to their control of the material apparatus of worship, then you are beholden to them not only to hope that they won't stab you, but also that they will help usher you into this life spiritually and the next life as well. Countering them is not merely going against the threat of stabbiness, it is going against the threat of eternal damnation or loss of your spirit or anything else as different religions have invented. And that is possible because you have a material object that can be controlled, because you have a material apparatus that can be withheld from the people or can be changed for the people. But even more deeply, and perhaps subconsciously, Nimrod is afraid of the ultimate truth that comes from the vision of Avram, of a God without shape, without form, that there is a God that is not material. In fact, there is only God that is not material, for that which is truly mighty doesn't have form or shape. That, as a matter of fact, the gulf between us and God is so enormous that even the sun, the moon, and the stars are more like us than they are like God. No matter how something may look mighty to the human eyes, no matter how big the mountain may be, no matter how powerful the storm may rage, no matter how impressive the king may look, between me and them and the dirt beneath my feet is almost no difference at all compared to us and God. Which means that the sun, the moon, and the stars, the cycle of weather and nature, and the king all have to obey God. Rather than the king being a demigod, a living representation of something powerful on earth that is in the pantheon, one of the many forces that must be heard, obeyed, and offered to, the king now takes his true place alongside the rest of us schlemiels as being one more flesh and blood person trying to get through life, hopefully with the least amount of harm to ourselves and others. And at that point, you can tell the king he's wrong, that you dislike what he's doing, that you think that the country would be better run if he wasn't stabbing quite so many people. At the point that idolatry falls, so too do the absolute kings of antiquity. At the point that idolatry falls, we rise as moral and ethical creatures, realizing that we have a king that far surpasses anybody who stands at the top of a ziggurat, or who will be buried in the chamber of a pyramid, or who will construct a cathedral that will dwarf the hovel that you live in. When you recognize that idolatry is merely trying to downgrade God so that God can be controlled and so that you will satisfy yourself with the material dominating you, rather than recognizing the spiritual overrides all of this material world, that is the revolution of Avram. And that is what Nimrod feared. That is why he challenged him in public. That is why he threw him into a furnace, hoping to disprove this idea, hoping to show the folly of worshiping something which had no form and yet which could control all of our behavior by guiding us with ethical life. Of course, Nimrod failed. Avram survived, and not only did he survive, but his vision thrived. It spread, it caught on, because there is an intuitive truth to it that we in the modern world almost are blind to. Because we have been raised now with 1,000 years of accepting this truth, it seems so self-evident. Who would worship an idol? Who would bow to a god, king, Pharaoh, or Nimrod? Well, everyone did, until someone didn't. Everyone did until Avram came along and said, that's as stupid as thinking one idol could smash others. That there is nothing magical in these magistrate people, these kings, these emperors. There is nothing magical in the statues they make of themselves or of their gods. There is only power in the force that created the whole universe. And that power doesn't ask us to smash idols. That power doesn't ask us to build ziggurats. That power asks us to build a life of justice, of love, of compassion, of goodness. Once that was said, then the world could understand. But it took Avram to say it. And it took Nimrod to make sure that we realized how dangerous that idea is. Well, dangerous to some, liberating for the rest of us. Shabbat Shalom.